Before we get going, I got a few things I need to go over. Number one is make sure you remain seated while the train is in motion. The cars will bump around and jostle around because of slack between the cars, little gaps between the coupling joints. So please remain seated while we're in motion. There will be one spot you can get up. I'll give the okay. Just wait for me to give that okay that you can get up after our brakes are set. Second rule. Oh, please keep working. Our second rule is going to be make sure you're not pushing on this the webbing along the side of the car. Webbing is super good at keeping leaves, branches, and all kinds of stuff on the outside of the car. Not so good at keeping it on the inside. Sorry, keeping you guys on the inside. All right. Well, sorry, crazy day so far. All right. I'll radio our engineer here shortly, and we'll get underway.
Pretty soon we'll start seeing Woody's again. That sounds hollow.
Moving, didn't you hear him say? Start moving.
Well, that's why they have the screen so keep the bugs up.
You ready? Ready? Right there.
Yeah! Alright, we're going to be going under our way here now. Alright, before we get started here, and as we get started, I'm going to talk a little bit about our museum. Our museum was founded in 1956. It was founded by a couple of businessmen who were very fond of the railroads. Well, during this time period, during the 1950s, the railroads started going under some very major changes in their day-to-day operations, such as the replacement of the traditional steam engine with the modern diesel-electric locomotives. Well, these businessmen saw that the steam engines were all heading to the scrap yards for money, and so they went out and they purchased the locomotive to preserve it. They bought a locomotive known as Milwaukee Road 261 from, obviously, the Milwaukee Road.
Yes!
And they brought it here, which was a park under the Green Bay jurisdiction. Now, about 70 years later, we have over 100 pieces of railroad equipment here on the property. And we have a bunch of more exhibits and pieces in our collection. You'll hear a little squeaking along the track here. That's because some of these cars are really old. This one was a box car from the 1950s. you come around our first corner here, you're going to notice this big brown thing at the end of the spur line over there, right behind the locomotive that says 2402 on it. That giant brown thing with the wings on it, that's known as a Jordan spreader. They're used to clear out the ballast alongside of the tracks, which is that gravel underneath them. They're meant to clear out any sticks, leaves, or other junk that has ended up in the ballast. That way it's made safe. During the winter months, they're also used to clear out snow along the side, so in case engine crew need to get off, they can walk in a safe area. Now this big brown car here at the end that says Burlington on it, and it also says Railway Express Agency, was a Railway Express Agency car. Does anyone know what the Railway Express Agency is? Well, it was a very early form of Amazon or UPS. They were a shipping company. You'd buy something on a catalog or a magazine, and you'd send in the money, and the Railway Express Agency would deliver it to your local depot, and or in the later years, they would deliver it to your house with a truck. Speaking of one of those trucks, we have one in our collection, and that is held inside the next building, which is the Lenfesty Center. Lenfesty Center is the big building here that says National Railroad Museum on it. We have quite a few of our coolest attractions in there, such as our Pennsylvania Railroad GG1, a locomotive that once served in Korea. We also have our Dwight D. Eisenhower A4 locomotive from the United Kingdom, and our pride and joy, the Union Pacific Big Boy number 4017, the largest steam locomotive in the world. This is my favorite stretch of the line, just because you can get this beautiful view of the Fox River here as it glistens here in the morning. It is wonderful. It's got that nice breeze off the river as well today. It's just wonderful out today. That breeze just feels amazing. Alright, we're going to be going over our high bridge here second. Now the high bridge is called the high bridge because it's on the higher end of the railroad. It's an uphill climb, ever so slightly to it, and that's a small downhill on the other end to the low bridge on the other side. This is Dutchman's Creek that we're going to go over on the right, and it's the Fox River on the left. I'll set you through call it the Sky Bridge over the High Bridge, just because when you're going over it, because there's no railings or walkways, it feels like you're flying through the sky. You guys are going to have to tell me if I'm cutting in and out down there.
You're good.
Good. Thank you. We just had to replace this microphone, so I just wanted to make sure. Thank you. Alright, we're going to be going down into the haunted woods. You'll start to notice all these crimson tombs back here and some really gothic architecture. Well, this is a part of the Terror on the Fox haunted house that we facilitate here at the museum. It's within the top 10 best haunted houses in the state of Wisconsin. It's quite a cool event. We run trains on back here, and we let them off to go through the haunted house and pick them back up. If you're not super into that, we also do our pumpkin train during that time of the season. It's more family oriented and a little bit more for the kids. Alright, we're going to be approaching what's known as an uncontrolled crossing, meaning there's no lights or bell there. And so the locomotive will have to blow its horn.
Yeah!
So for those who have sensitive hearing, please cover your ears during this section. The horn is incredibly loud. Here it comes.
Yeah!
There you go. That should be come around here, we're going to be arriving at our hobo boxcar. You'll be able to get up at the hobo boxcar. Just wait for my go ahead to get up. You'll be able to move around, stretch out, maybe sit on a different side of the car. And then I'll keep talking during that because the museum allows me to keep talking.
Where are the hobos?
Alright, it is now safe to get up, move around, stretch your legs. I'm going to be talking here for a little bit. Alright. Now we're at our hobo boxcar. Does anyone actually know what a hobo is? Yeah?
It's people who technically ride train cars just to get somewhere.
That's right, they are people who ride train cars. Most importantly, they'd be someone who rides train cars illegally. They don't pay for tickets. And so they'll climb up on the roofs or hide away in empty boxcars, and then they'll carry along their way across the country. They're usually people mostly looking for work. But the term hobo dates far back, even into the 1860s. A lot of people believe the term hobo actually comes from Civil War Southern soldiers. These Southern soldiers were not compensated for their wartime effort, and so they'd have to figure out their own way home. And they would ride the railroads illegally just to do that. And so if you ask these Civil War soldiers, hey, where are you going? They would say, well, I'm homeward bound. And you take the first two letters of H-O of homeward and the first two letters of bound, B-O, and you get hobo. That's one of our personal favorite stories, but there's much debate on actually where the term comes from. Well, these hobos use symbols and signs to contact and talk to each other, even if they weren't there. So let's say if it was alongside the track, maybe you'd have a coal bunker or water tower alongside, and you would see signs, much like the ones we have on the boxcar, written on these objects alongside. They wouldn't probably be written on boxcars due to the boxcar being moved around. They would be on a permanent structure in the area. I'll tell you a little bit about these signs here. Now, you'll notice the one that looks like a clown there, about on the midway on the left-hand side of the boxcar there. Well, that clown was for a specific hobo. That was Laughing Larry. Laughing Larry was a very popular hobo. He was known for being incredibly funny. And so he got the name Laughing Larry, and eventually that became his sign to identify that he was in town. Another one there would be the boxcar with the name Betty underneath it. That one's quite self-explanatory. That would be Boxcar Betty. She was one of 12,000 female hobos during the Great Depression. So that's an interesting tale of her own. And then you have the one on the other side here, the one with the box, the dot, and that squiggly line. Some of you might look at that and say, what? The other two make sense, but what does that mean? Well, that meant dangerous water. The box with the dot in it meant danger, and the squiggly line meaning water. So you add those together and you get dangerous water. So if you're thinking down south, maybe there's alligators or it's polluted water. Or if you're up here, you're thinking maybe it's more rapids or paper mill pulp. The next icon on the car, the one that looks like a little hashtag or a tic-tac-toe game I've heard a lot. Does anyone know what that means? That means jail time. A lot of these towns are not very fans of hobos, and so the township would have the police department lock them up for vagrancy. Vagrancy meaning they have no money, and so if you had no money, the city would fine you for not having money. And then they would lock you up. But a lot of these hobos wanted to get locked up, and that sounds a little strange at first, but then you start to think about what jail can provide you. What can jail provide you? Food, shelter, water, that's right. And especially up here in the winter months, I don't know if you want to be outside too much. It might be a little too cold. But yeah, they would provide food, shelter, and all that. And you'd either work your time off with the city itself, or a lot of the times these hobos were sent to work for the railroads themselves as a part of a chain gang, meaning people who would be locked up for prison and would work for the railroads as a track gang. Alright, now the next one here, it's a little weird as well. Some of these hobo signs were not very specific, but they gave you a rough idea. But this next one here, the upside down Y. That's a little strange. Well, it actually meant this was a non-hobo friendly town. The Y was upside down. It meant no hobos are wanted here. These people don't want you to come into their town. If the Y was right side up, it meant they were usually much friendlier. They were more accepting and understanding of these hobos. After all, a lot of these people were very honest, good people looking for work during the Great Depression. They constantly got mixed up with tramps and bums, who were people who wanted to cause harm and did this for fun. Now we got two more symbols. They're a little harder for some of you guys to see. So I'm going to talk about the one on the far end of the boxcar. Some of you down there might be able to see it a little bit. It's very hard to see. After all, it's on that left wall of the boxcar. And that is a picture of a cat. Does anyone have an idea what the cat might mean? I heard a cat over there. It does not. But I'll tell you why it's a cat. So, the actual symbol of a cat was associated with kind people. It was associated with the kind of person who would let out milk for a cat. Because when you let out milk for a cat, you'll set it down, and a little stray cat will come up and they'll drink it. And then the next morning you got 12 others waiting for milk. And so these were very kind people. They were usually the spouses of hobos, the loved ones. And they would leave out food or help give shelter, or maybe give them a safe place to sleep for the night. Usually very kind things in exchange for some general labor around the house, usually like fixing a fence or helping out with plumbing, stuff like that. Now it's going to be a little hard on this side for you guys, but we have the opposite problem now. You guys aren't going to be able to see it, but you guys probably could. But the picture of a chicken on the side of the boxcar. Does anyone have an idea what the chicken might mean? I hear food usually a lot. It doesn't mean food. It's actually very hard to understand, but once I explain it, you're going to be like, oh, I get it now. But the actual picture of a chicken means a telephone is in town. Back in the day, before cell phones and the internet, it was really hard to get in contact with people. And so you would really hope to have a telephone, a landline telephone, in your town to access to talk to people. And even that, it was super uncommon. So the image of the chicken got associated with it, though, is because at that time, during the 1930s, the telephone was associated with a term called squawk box. They were constantly called squawk boxes. And so, much like a chicken squawks, you would squawk into a telephone. Alright, we're going to be getting back under our way here. So everyone, please take your seats. Alright, some of you might have been able to hear what I said on this side, but I said 106, you have the high ball. Well, 106 being the number that's designated to our locomotive by the Green Bay route, that's kind of a communications thing. So if I was on the radio here and I wanted to specifically talk to a certain locomotive over another one on the railroad, you could use its number to identify which one it is, such as number 106. Now, the term highball you might have heard me say. Now, when I say highball, I'm not talking about the drink or golf.
Nope.
The term highball actually originates as a railroad term.
Full power.
The term comes from the days of old school signaling.
Yep.
Before the electric signals that were powered by either had lights or they had mechanical motors to move up and down an arm, you had a ball that would be on a pulley at the station. Well, if this ball was down very low at the very bottom of it, that meant your train had to stop. Your train had to stop at the next station. Well, if the ball was all the way at the very, very top, it meant you guys had to go through, you had the go-ahead, you had the high ball. This term is still used in railroading to this day.
Yep.
We're going over the low bridge on Dutchman's Creek. You'll be able to see plenty of animals down there. Some ducks down there, I think. But you'll notice there's some weird-shaped rocks down there. Well, Dutchman's Creek was the home of a lumber mill at one point, and they used the creek as a log pond. In fact, interestingly enough, this lumber mill was brought in some wood, and that wood is still around to this day.
Railroad
It used to build
diamonds.
a fort up on the northern end of Green Bay. Can't think of the name right now. But that fort was then relocated and brought across the river here to Heritage Hill, where they currently have some of the wood that was milled right here on this property. Now as we go through the yard here, you're going to notice that big building full of locomotives and rolling stock and cars and stuff. And that will be our McCormick Pavilion. Now you see that big silver locomotive on the far left there, not the caboose right there, but the big silver one, the big number 2 on there. Once we get past this boxcar, you'll see it. But that is the General Motors Aerotrain. That's right, the car manufacturer General Motors built a train. During the 1950s, they saw the railroads were changing a bunch of stuff, and so they went out and took some of their bus bodies and put railroad wheels under it and built a custom-built, streamlined locomotive. Well, these cars were meant to go 100 miles per hour. They were incredibly light. They were meant to go 100 miles per hour down the line. Only problem is they weren't air-conditioned. They didn't have really good suspension at all, and it would rattle a lot. But I think probably the scariest of it is that they were so light that the locomotive would pick up air underneath it and would lift off the tracks. It's why here at the museum we refer to the locomotive as one of General Motors' great failures. As we pass through here, this is the Discovery Depot where we got onto the train. We'll be making one more lap and then we'll be getting back off. Discovery Depot was never a real depot, but it's stylized to look like one you'd probably see in about the late 1800s or in the early 1900s. It's a real neat spot. There's plenty of cool stuff to do in there. There's plenty of wooden railway trains that you can play with, as well as some mock-up locomotive cabs that you can pretend to be an engineer, fireman, or conductor, much like myself. Now we're going to be coming up to the signal up here, the big red one with the arm on it. You'll notice a lot of these signals work. All these signals are preserved by the Boy Scouts. We have them do their railroad merit patches here at the museum, where they learn to do general railroad maintenance in case of an emergency, such as the repair of railroad signals. Let's say if a signal was down, you can get in a really bad train accident. And so it's important for them to learn how to repair them. And so they do all the general maintenance on our signals. Now behind the drawing spreader and behind the locomotive that says 2402, but between the car that the Railway Express Agency car, you'll see that brown thing with that says Great Northern Line. Now I pointed out one earlier, but that is a caboose. Now some of you might say, hey, how could that be a caboose? They're supposed to be red, aren't they? Well, not necessarily. A lot of the railroads would decorate them whatever color they wanted, and then put a sign on them saying their railroad name on them. After all, they were just general utility vehicles. But for instance, a lot of the railroads chose to do different colors than red. Red was just the cheapest. But a lot of them chose to do colors such as the Burlington Northern choosing green, the Union Pacific choosing yellow.
Yep.
And we actually have a Milwaukee Road one that made it like kind of sunburnt orange. Now on the left here, you're going to notice this big tower thing. Well, that's our lookout tower. Everyone wave. That's our lookout tower. Lookout tower is 99 steps to the top. I don't know if these fine people have gotten there. I haven't been able to make it myself. But I've always looked to skip the gym, and so I've tried to make it before. Didn't get halfway. But if you guys are looking to skip the gym, I totally recommend it. Apparently you're able to see Lambeau Field from the top as well.
Yep.
Now we're on the other side of the McCormick building.
Nice, I can actually see what company it is. Canadian National, all right.
Over here you can see a plethora of things, such as that big gray building with the slanted roof is our restoration shop. And you can also see the other locomotive there, the big red, black Canadian National one. It's kind of getting tucked away by the trees now.
Yep.
But that one's also our locomotive that we run here at the museum. As I said, the big gray building with the slanted roof, that's our restoration shop. I recall we have 3 full-time restoration specialists here at the museum. I believe we have some 20-some staff members total. But the rest of our workers here at the museum are volunteers, such as myself. Our volunteers do a plethora of things around the property, such as help set up for events such as Terror on the Fox or Pumpkin Train or Easter or all those kinds of things. But it also comes down to the day-to-day, such as running the trains here at the museums, conductors, engineers, and all that, as well as doing general maintenance. We are constantly looking for mechanics, we're looking for electricians, painters, anyone who can really help with getting some of our rolling stock looking nice and ready to go. We're back on the high bridge, and I think those are ducks over there on the left end of the car. That's quite nice. As I said, this is my favorite stretch, just a beautiful view of the Fox River here. River's a good spot for boating, but would not recommend swimming or drinking out of it. After all, it's had so many paper mills on it. It's also the most populated river in the world with paper mills. Now, as we go back here to the Terror on the Fox area, we do, as I mentioned before, we do have quite a few events that we do here at the museum. And of course, it's, the museum wants me to plug it, but I want to plug it because it's so cool what we do. And that is all the events. We do Polar Express here at the museum. We do our Pumpkin Train and Terror on the Fox. And all these things help the museum keep our lights on. Polar Express is a huge event for us. We sold ticket. We put the tickets on sale for it July 25th this year. And within 6 hours of the tickets being on sale, all 12,000 tickets sold out.
Wow. Like a Taylor Swift concert.
Here comes that horn again. Sorry for the late heads up here, but that'll be enough for 106 today. As we come around here, you'll notice these 2 really decrepit looking railroad cars here, these little passenger cars here. Well, some of you might say, hey, those look very familiar. Well, that's because they're sister cars and were owned by the same railroad as the car ahead of us, the Josephine. These 2 cars were stripped out to repair the Josephine and get it into running order. But they were all 3 of them were all owned by the same parent railroad of the Reading Railroad Company. Some of you might say, hey, isn't that supposed to be pronounced Reading Railroad? Well, no,
Nope.
It's pronounced Reading Railroad. It was after all a family name. Now, some of you might also think, hey, that name sounds familiar. Well, the Reading Railroad is still known for today from a certain board game. Does anyone know what that board game is? Monopoly, that's right. So now you know that little tidbit of information. Whenever people say, hey, I got the Reading Railroad, you can actually look at them and say, no, it's the Reading Railroad. On a side note, that's completely unrelated. I'm not allowed at Monopoly nights anymore. So, that's it.
Breaks families apart.
Alright, we're going to be going back over our road bridge here. You'll be able to see some of those rocks here. We're going to be slowly approaching the depot as well. Now to end off our little tour around the museum, I always like to end off with answering a question that some of you might have. Well, some of you might be thinking, how did this rinky-dink railroad out in the middle of Green Bay ever become the National Railroad Museum? Well, as I said, our founders were very wealthy people. They were very wealthy businessmen. And so they had a lot of friends in Washington. Well, they went up to their friends in Washington and said, hey, would you mind if we became America's National Railroad Museum? And they said, no problem. So they passed legislation, and now we are America's National Railroad Museum. We do wear that name with pride. Since we are the National Railroad Museum, we are owned by the U.S. government. We get no funding from the U.S. government, though, and we are also regulated by TSA. But most of our funding comes from the great people of you guys. Thank you guys so much for coming out here. After all, you guys are allowing us to keep our lights on, keep the trains running, to keep history alive here at the museum. So we just gotta say thank you so much for being here. Our staff members here at the museum also do a fantastic job. They're super nice and super accommodating here at the museum. After all, if it wasn't for, most importantly, you guys or the staff members, I wouldn't be here talking, and I wouldn't be able to come out here every Saturday and play trains. We're going to be arriving here now. It is currently 12:30. We'll be arriving. Remember, stay hydrated, stay healthy. After all, the museum's a big property, and it's going to get mighty hot out today. And remember, most importantly, this is all work equipment. So remember, it can be a little dangerous. Thankfully, here at the museum, though, we do a lot of hands-on stuff. You can go up into the cab of our engines, you can touch the throttle, you can touch the valves. It is incredibly cool what we're able to do here. Everything is hands-on. And so remember, be safe around the equipment. Don't climb on things that say do not climb on. And as I said earlier, most importantly, stay hydrated. As I said, it'll be hot out today. Alright, I'm going to get a radio from our engineer, giving me the A-OK. Alright, it'll be now safe to stand up. I'll unlock the gate. Everyone have a great day. Thank you very much.